And we're live. Welcome. Of course, I'm Suze. And what we're going to talk about today, guys, is your immune system, or lack thereof, and how it relates to this pandemic that we're experiencing. So, to begin with, I should first say that I'm still waiting on Mr. Wrinkles. You know, no reason to put off a show. Second off, it's very important that I don't try to jump through any imaginary hoops and try to finish this in the time that I've been given today. It's 3:02, and I will be seeing a friend that I've known my whole life, so it must make her family, huh? And she'll be here, about 75 minutes. So we do have a little time. And what I'm going to do, and these aren't even notes, I mean, they're in my head, but they are written down. As I discuss each thing, maybe I'll stop and make a note or tell you guys about what I really need to do in my historical library to bring to you the most accurate facts that I think anybody's brought so far. Okay, let's talk about the beginning of my day, because it's important and it matters because of the influx of information. So this morning when I woke up, there was a very interesting video that was already in progress. And it was a brilliant man that was speaking on George Washington. And I know speaking about George Washington is as dangerous as anything in this redunculous war game. But I'm already interested in George Washington because, of course, the Glasscock lineage is related to George Washington on his mother's side. You know, the hidden place where nobody talks about. And isn't it funny that you wind up with two names that are known through this history that we're so entertained by? And so that would be Glasscock, but we really have to look at the root of the word, and that's cock. I mean, online in the game that is so important that we're playing now. And the other thing that's important is, of course, on George Washington's mother's side, we have the name Ball up here. And when you think about Ball, of course, if you're a good redhead like I am, you think about Lucille Ball, the famous entertainer, right? Married to that Corona-toting Ricky Ricardo. Joe's home. Rex is excited, and hopefully Chauncey will come home. And here again, it's going to be loud, and it's going to be hard to stay on track. Hola, Mr. Touchdown. Good to see you. Did you get the kind comment that I left you on one of my other videos? I hope you did. A lot of people like to play with me because they'll say, yeah, 1 minute the bitch is nice to me, and the other minute she's just mean and ornery, like all get out. But of course, this appears under different names and different factions, like we discussed the other day with Miss Maxie. So we have a full range of this. Okay, let's get back to the point of my story today. I guess Wrinkles ran away. I can't imagine how he got out. Okay, so next on the list with this subject about this video, it was amazing. All the positive points that the speaker brought forward, you know, he brought to the forefront of the experience. And I think that's one of the hardest things today is that no one is able to look beyond their frustration and focus on the positive aspects of a bigger story. So later on, when I meet with you again, I will have the name of that video. See, there's the first thing to write down, right? I want to be able to provide that video on George Washington. And this gentleman who was speaking to the graduating class of the college that he was illuminating, let's say. It was really good. So I rolled in to that about 15 minutes before it was done. So, I mean, I look forward to seeing the whole video myself. But what immediately happened, I mean, right then and there, was a online church service about St. George. And for any of you that are interested in the facts of my life, you have to realize that I chose Lutheran. Probably the only reason why is because they didn't shun me, and they were kind and compassionate, and I was a young girl, you know, 10 years old, walking into a church. But back to St. George. Okay. The reason I know about St. George is from Rudolf Steiner's educational format, which was manipulated. And when the anthroposophical group of this threefold social order were just bombed to hell and back. Well, of course, the Waldorf school was for anyone from childhood on up through actually college. There are a few Waldorf schools located in the United States that take education all the way up. Surely not in our divided state, but you know, in bigger, more important places like New York and California, there really is such a thing. Okay, so when my son Ian was in Waldorf school, they used to celebrate St. George's Day and a story about St. George and the dragon. Now, a big thing about Waldorf is they were into eurythmy, which is the flow and the speech, movement, song and dance, kind of like a mystery play, kind of like a really tripped out version of a story that you had probably never heard of to begin with, unless you are what I would perceive to be as Catholic. And that's going to take us back to this beautiful church service that was very, very deep. It took me back to why I love church. And of course, as someone that doesn't need to attend a building or an institution to connect with what I know as my Heavenly Father and Mother. It was a huge deal. So, what was interesting? Okay, I had been exposed to this parable, and it really had nothing to do with what the church service gave to me. And we were sitting here in the morning, Joe and I, and watching the news. And what I said to him was, I'm attending church right now. So I really had no interest in the rhetoric that was being played on the morning news. And of course, I hear a lot of things at once naturally. I can multitask. So I just chose to attend that church service. I'm going to close the door. They used to call this room that I'm in a parlor. So when people would come to call or to visit, you would welcome them into the front of your home, generally facing north. And of course, the south side of the home, where the sun would rise first, would heat up the kitchen and bring light to the area where the family basically connected and began their day. Okay, so back to the story. Joe's background is Catholic, mine is not. We come from two different worlds, and one of the best things we do together is debate in a friendly way. I mean, because of course, when it's your smoking buddy and someone that you've raised your kids with, it's easy to discuss a wide variety of subjects. And he began telling me the Roman Catholic version of who St. George is and how he came to be. And it was getting on my nerves. But the important thing about what happened was what I said was, this has nothing to do with Catholicism. I'm feeling it's like Greek Orthodox or something. And so behind me on the teakwood table, you can see an incredible relic that is actually from the Greek Orthodox Church. And really, the only way that I even knew that was because I grabbed this at a resale shop that's located with the Little Caesars, and that I lost the friendship of the woman because, of course, I filmed the building with no emergency exit. But isn't this amazing? And you can see that it's actually carved from some kind of a stone or some kind of a nut. And of course, there's the Madonna and Child, right? So this is going to tie together with our overall story about what the purpose of a mother is. And, you know, like Joe was saying this morning, well, you know, look what mothers used to do. They used to keep the house clean from contagion and, you know, clean the kids off and deal with their spiritual and their physical needs. I mean, not that I do any of that as good enough as what people in the old days did. But I bring information that was always purposeful and true historically, as far back as we can take it. So, you know, I may not be Susie Homemaker or have dinner on the table or even be anybody's perfect version of what a woman should be. We have to have a balance, not only between our masculine and our feminine side, we also have to find a way to balance the ignorance concerning how to stay well. And believe it or not, the things that come out of our mouth can be just as negative for our health as what we imbibe or ingest, eat or drink, as well as any transdermal poisons that we put on our body. At that point, we're into pharmaceuticals and beauty care products and all the petrochemical waste, which actually lowered people's immune system. I mean, ever since the Industrial Revolution began. Let me see if there's anything I need to say anymore about St. George. There was a female voice singing, a male efficient speaking, at least 2 languages, and then there was someone that was whispering. And of course, to me, that would be like the Holy Spirit. It makes no difference if you think the Holy Spirit is male or female. But of course, in this, it was a male. And that's fine. It was beautiful. The other thing that amazed me about this video is this Greek Orthodox church. All the altars and all the walls were done in teak wood. And that table that our relic is on is a teak wood table. That's enough about that. Hi, Nikki. Hi, Amy. Okay. So I'm going to let Jimmy's comment in because I have less than an hour and we won't have to get all anal retentive about it. We'll just let it sit. And I'll take it from there. Okay. So, like we discussed the other day, no other than the home of all the secret projects, St. Louis, Missouri, you know, theoretically on this news, is going to be the first state to sue China because they lied to us and we didn't move quick enough and all this horse shit. Now, see, that's the outside story. So when we talk about mystery schools, there's always the obvious explanation that just jumps right in your face and flips you off. And then there's the secret knowledge behind it. And of course, there were many people that were rejected from early mystery schools because their faith and their politics and their religion was like their outer cloak instead of where these mysteries are something that have to arise in you. And that's why so many people deny or rebuke the obvious. I don't know how my visual is for you guys, but what I see on my end is the light changing from a darker screen to a, to a lighter screen, like say right now, for instance. You guys have heard my beliefs and the explanation that I've brought very publicly about this virus that was released through the computer. And you should know by now that one of my first messages that I brought when I came online is there's no secrets. And that's why I say it doesn't matter if you believe in technology, God, or the devil. Why are we living like there's any secrets during a plague that has the attributes of AIDS? And at the same time, why do we believe any of the bullshit we've ever heard about AIDS? Originally, in Jonas Salk's book, which we will need for this study as we go forward, is the idea that it came from an infected monkey. And then we have to tag evolution because so many people either are mocking us because we believe and behave like an ape, or because of Darwinism, which is about as irrelevant as Freud at this point. In the meantime, I've talked extensively about this idea of these vaccines, and I bring polio to the forefront now, that there was a really bad batch that they vaccinated everyone with between the years of 1958 and 1963. I'm born in 1964, and I feel grateful for that. The whole thing about this war of who will receive a vaccine or who will receive a chip or who will be treated and how do you know you have it and what ass are you going to kiss to jump through a hoop to take a test that pretty much, I mean, you got the same story as the polio thing. I mean, they can't even make a fucking Q-tip test without contaminating it. And you want to let somebody shove that up your nose into your brain. Stupid. I've earned a lot of hatred because I can easily discern who is sick and who's not. And as I go through this, I'll give examples. And that's going to make a lot of people upset. But we're also going to bring a lot of important information, like say, this is a good one. Okay. let's talk about fevers because there's so many different kinds. And, we have all these old stories about how to cure a cold or to cure a fever. And, a lot of these people that have this reoccurring fever, which is the virus reoccurring, like has already happened in other countries. Now, Joe tells me it hasn't happened here, and I don't agree with him. He listens to his people, and I listen to what I'm guided to listen to. And then I decide if I can agree with the methodology of the speaker. It's kind of tough to do when everybody's a fucking comedy actor, a pokey in the head, but that's why I do bring up these different people as we go. And they might seem far and few between, but they're everywhere. And they're coming at it from a different perspective, like we all are. Okay. I think the most important thing that I discuss next would be an idea that needs to be not only burned into your heart and mind, but this fire is supposed to remove the dross, and the dross is the false ego behind what you believe you know about an illness or a situation. It gets really important, especially when we consider that, say, I'll be seeing someone today who is innocent, troubled, tormented, and that kind of polite that gets you in trouble. And since I've known her since I was 3 years old, I have every right to speak on it. And back to the contagion issue. If you happen to have a strain in your DNA that has been passed down through the generations, it is really a lot like cancer in the sense that everything begins with a cell. And you never know how the cell gets fucked up, but you do know it reproduces. And of course, as we evolve, things do mutate. Even if it weren't tampered or manipulated with, and it was just an organic thing, it would still mutate and evolve or devolve. And we're more in a cycle of devolvement while everybody believes that they're ascending into another form. And like that's not my beliefs, and anybody that tries to shove them into my mouth or my consciousness, good Lord, we know what kind of trouble I'm going to give them. And that's because I'm free to think my own thoughts. And that was big today in the George Washington story because, of course, while my partner in debating is telling me all the terrible things that I'm already well aware of, about this slavery story, which rolls into being an indentured servant. And, no doubt slaves need to be told what to do. And that's why to this day, there are people with college educations that are a slave to the box which they got shoved in for all the money in the world. To me, that's pretty irrelevant at this point. The devolvement comes when you realize you're no longer trapped in that box. It's like one of them stupid tests that they give to animals where there's a door open, but the food or the comfort is right there before the door. And a lot of people choose to never walk through the door. That's a really hard thing when your whole life, not of your own accord, you were injected and poked and prodded and experimented on in the name of science. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. A lot of people like to make up stupid shit. And I was given all the vaccinations and inoculations that the law ordained at the time I was born. And I have a chart upstairs. Okay, all right. So I have a chart upstairs that actually gives the numbers of how many vaccines were required during the different decades. When we get to my children, of course, I started having kids in 87, and it went through 2000. When my oldest, who is now 33, bless her heart, was a teenager, that's when they were pushing that, that stupid vaccine, human papilloma virus, HPV. And back in the day, that stupid, like if you go to the gas station and you eat that food there and they make them chicken things and they put them in the hot dog roller, it makes them kind of crispy. My middle daughter used to love to eat them funky things. And Joe would say to her, that's HPV chicken. And I'm like, whatever. I mean, I'm not even eating meat. But the point is in one state, every one of those girls was forced to get that stupid vaccine. And, a lot of them basically just made people sterile. It was one of those things where they say they're protecting you from STDs. But you really have to wonder, how much did they know behind closed doors about messing up the woman's cycle? And you guys know that I'm well versed on all things sexual, no doubt. But they were making a joke this morning that Trump didn't know the difference between HIV and HPV. That kind of leads us into the story that my big mouth exposed in very recent past about how whether you're talking about herpes or AIDS. I mean, both are just tragic in nature, no doubt. But here again, they're not just sexually transmitted. So it puts us back into a place of being sinful and sorry and disgusting. And it leads to that saying that many humans are no more than worms. And then we're into the parasites and the worms and the bacteriology and the virology. And remember, back in Salk's day, he was chastised by the rest of the medical community because he was wasting his time trying to treat a virus, and that it would be way more beneficial to his life and his sanity if he just stuck to what was already known that was plagiarized. A lot of people want to talk about whatever gave them cancer. But like I said, we always had an inactive cancer in us. That would be like an inactive virus or an inactive blood cancer or bone cancer. It's not just an organ, it's an entire system. So, like we discussed the last time we were together, the whole object of this attack is to lower a human's immune system to such a place that they are unable to sustain life on their own. One of the big stories that came out too was that these people that are getting sick, their blood is coagulating, means it's getting very thick, and the people fall into heart attacks or strokes. Now, here again, when we have a political system and a medical institution that does not address the pertinent facts, we should know to follow the money, like I talked about. One of the biggest things that they did was hid the truth about blood type. And the way Joe explains it is it's like different cars need different motor oil, like for the engines to run. The majority of the population is still O, and that's at 41%. And O blood types have the thinnest viscosity of blood. So when we're talking about viscosity, that means the thickness of a liquid. Plain water in a squirt bottle has a different viscosity than 70% isopropyl alcohol. So if I see a squirt bottle sitting outside that doesn't say alcohol, the first thing my dumb ass does is goes, hey, what's this doing out here? And I spray it on my hand and I smell it. And I knew it wasn't alcohol. I also knew it wasn't alcohol because I'm the bitch that wrote alcohol on the squirt bottles for people to disinfect their feet, their shoes, their clothes before they come in the door. And we're also at a place here where even this tragic divided state of Missouri, 1 minute is talking this shit about, the planned reopening. And then, on the other hand, which must be up their butt or something, what they're talking about is this whole, let me try to say it right. Here's what it's like. You got a bunch of wackadoo fucking moms that say, let's have a chicken pox party. Let's all meet at the park at high noon and get our kids sick. I mean, damn. I used to be considered, not normal because I didn't have chicken pox as a child. I didn't have chicken pox until 7th grade. I drank off a water fountain at Grace Chapel at the Lutheran school and got the mononucleosis. And oh shit, my grade school principal, he wrote my whole name on the chalkboard. Susanna Bernadine Glasscock has mononucleosis and she's contagious and she's not going to be back at school for a week. So here's the point of that story. The mono came first. The water fountain, right? Or kissing Scott Meyer. It doesn't much matter. The point is, it wasn't more than probably a couple months after I got mono that I got chicken pox, and that's something. And in the meantime, since I've got a pretty good immune system, I didn't get chicken pox like, how some people get them and they're just everywhere and they're just scratching themselves raw and getting impetigo, right? And, their scalps full of scars. I saw a lot of weird things growing up. My chicken pox was tolerable. And so, of course, I have to take that now into this day and age. And I think to myself, back in the day, man, I never saw anybody with shingles. I knew old people. I liked old people. It wasn't like I just hung out with kids. In the meantime, now, every SOB gets the shingles, right? And it's an autoimmune. See, so this is really about our immune systems and the amount of poison we can bear. And if you ask me, this is a double-edged sword because I'm here to talk about staying healthy while I do what I do, which obviously isn't healthy. I know it's an oxymoron. But it's like I always said to people when I quit eating meat and quit drinking alcohol, as I said, man, this book says you need to eliminate your poisons down to 2 out of 10. What you eat and drink is one category. Your personal care products are another category. And your thoughts and the way your brain works is the third and final category. So, people are so ignorant in what they do because a lot of people say what they do isn't wrong. And I'm not here to judge anybody. Here again, this is about bringing conversations that steer off all the negative crap that you hear time and time again and focus on something positive. I'm blessed to have a good immune system, but I've worked for it too. And so, like, say, drinking Pepsi or Coke is every bit as poisonous as smoking a cigarette, and bacon is a carcinogen. So, I don't mean to offend anybody by their pork consumption. This is about simply identifying poisons. And then in the Live Right for Your Blood Type, of course, what you learn is that the most hurtful thing an O blood type can do to themselves is have that cheeseburger. Not because the meat's bad for them, it's not. They need the red meat. It's the combination of the protein and the starch when they sit down to eat. It's that simple. It's like whatever kind of acid that your stomach produces. It breaks down different foods at different rates. I can't tell you guys that everything is going to be okay if you go out and get some thieves oil or some immune blend, because now you can't get it anywhere. I also can't rush you off to a health food store to get cellular nutrition with the tissue salts. Really good for first aid too. Poof, it's gone. See how stupid that is? And, you know, even in the hospital, they surely wouldn't deny that Tums, the antacid, is pretty much calcium carbonate. So, what's the BFD of allowing people to have homeopathy, ferrum phosphate to be exact, iron phosphate, short-term fer phos? It's an oxygen provider. It's an inflammation reducer. It is a fever reducer. And it will remove fluid that can lead to pneumonia. Now, see that one thing right there? People would be a hell of a lot better. And while our government is using the excuse to get millions and billions and trillions of bucks that aren't real for PSYOP organizations, instead of simply giving people what is their God-given right to have, which is natural healing. See, that's what pisses me off. Why do we have to be so afraid of being a human organism? Well, because, see, if you're a machine, you don't need to have an immune system, and they'll fucking turn you off whenever they want. Now, the thread that runs through every one of these damn stories is they took good people and lied about them. And granted, good people do some bad shit too. I mean, that's what the human life is all about. They didn't learn that lesson. I'm not talking about me here again. It's really hard to double back and say, we're not going to allow you people to have access to cellular nutrition, even though it doesn't interfere with any Western medication. Isn't that something? Like Monty would say, my old buddy Dan Sote. It's like a person is a body and they contain all the parts, and they don't know they're all the parts. And so in order to do this healing, everybody's got to figure out they got all the parts inside of them. And if they're at peace, their immune system will function at the highest rate it can, whether they have an autoimmune disorder or not. There's idiotos out there that believe that you can't remove heavy metal from your body. Oh, they bank on it. And I disagree. And I have done the cleanses, and they did make me feel weird. And here again, I can attest to all these things. So ask yourself. I mean, it's a great question, you know, for all the brains out there, right? How is it that you can create a list for someone, and on one side, list all the reasons why? Knock it off. Knock it off. All the reasons why you would be unhealthy. And then on the other side, oh, but they don't want to talk about the other side because we're too stupid to get it because they don't have it. You know, even a medical doctor only is provided in the clinical college education of becoming said doctor or nurse 4 hours of homeopathy dedicated to keeping someone well. Years ago, what happened, it's kind of like the bullshit story about religion and politics being divided. It never happened. If on the one hand, there's all the sins that we commit against our own body, and then on the other list, we have all the sins that have been committed by programs, no matter how innocent they appear to be, of what would kill us. It's kind of like focusing on the wrong question. Like, how does Jimmy Touchdown know more than Miss Maxie or myself? See, that's true genius. That's philosophy. That is an old, old, old art and science. Because back then, they didn't have all the technology or the modern medicine that would keep them well. The only thing that kept them well was a very active lifestyle combined with non-processed foods and a great mind to discuss it. Whereas now, like a lot of these people, man, that are getting this fever, not the good kind, the bad kind, and they get the nose. And of course, you know, I say that you got a family of 5 in there and they just sniff them down their throats. And ugh, gross. Or all the people that are purposely going out and coughing and spitting on shit because since they're doomed, I mean, they're helping you to die and surely you'll thank them in the afterlife. You know, it's like, what kind of fucking heroin or crack, I mean, is your delight, right? It's ignorance, and it's childish, and it's behavior. Like I've talked to you about, and I got about 10 more minutes, is that my love for doing hair and running a business and knowing everything there is to know about it. So nobody can ever sue me for malpractice. And I do have the right to refuse a service that I feel is deadly. Okay, good enough. This idea that 1 minute they want to open hair salons on the 4th, and in the other turn of the toilet paper roll, they say, but you have to stay 6 feet away from your client. And so, like on Mainstream last night, of course, Stephen Colbert, who gives me shit that I can't say his name, but I just did. He had like these two long arm things, put together, and it was holding the clipper that was cutting dude's hair. And it's kind of like as people are calling me and asking questions. Well, the first thing I say to him is, don't you remember I'm the bitch that's been talking to you for over 20 years about homeopathy and live right for your blood type and counting poisons? I mean, I'm that bitch. Nobody's coming in this crib sick. And I'm well enough. I mean, isn't it the stupidest thing to think a well person has to wear a mask to keep themselves well? Now we're really Dilberts, And say my friend that's coming to visit. Well, she's like all those first responders that wear masks every day, to keep everybody well while everybody's fucking sick, playing chicken pox, right? But it's really AIDS and it's not. And it's gonna just suck your calcium and mess up your cells and do the dance and weaken your immune system. See, here's the point. One simple point. Here's what she says to me. Well, I've got this open spot on my nose from the mask rubbing it raw. Okay, class. What's the first line of defense in the human body? It's your skin you're in. So whether it's a scar that's healed up and it's just a kink in your armor or an open fucking wound, do you know that that's how it gets in? Now, in the meantime, what I'm going to do, and I do it often, maybe you haven't seen it. Maybe I should illustrate. Just give me 2 seconds and I'm going to play a little music real quick. Just hang on. Why do you think it's called coronavirus? They wanted to build a wall to keep Mexico out. Why do you think Roberto Sanchez is the daggum Don? Ugh. Where'd he go? He already quit singing? What the hell happened? This was from these concerts, and it was called Sandro Behind Closed Doors. Pretty hot, huh? And so It's like
What's interesting about this is my friend that has Cuban parents and knows the language says that a lot of these songs, of course, the guy that's singing them, his first language is not Spanish. And of course, Adam knows a handful of languages, no doubt. He's been all over the world. But English is his first language. And this would be the same guy that's singing all the new Elvis stuff that's been put out ever since this millennium, since 2000 on. But today he shows that he was actually doing it in 1997. So we gotta add a few years to the time chart. And I'm sure Adam started singing about the same age that his dad did. Back to it. This is a nice song.
too watery. I think so, Garda. So, yeah. I was hoping you'd show up, Brandon. I left you a note on Twitter.
Right, this is just all a coincidence, and none of it's real. And I'm nuttier than a Christmas fruitcake, and he's a ghost.
Or he's a Highlander.
That's Adam cleared his voice that way.
May I ask what brand that is?
Of course, I know that from listening to 900 recordings he's put out.
Let me type it in.
You wanted to know me to see if I was honest.
Okay.
Come on, hurry up.
For some reason, even though I'm plugged in, we're not charging.
See, that lets you know.
It says I should be.
Which play he's doing.
You always need a haircut. You'd be a 5-week client, Brandon. Because you don't want it to look like a haircut. See, you want your hair sculpted. It's way too thick. So, some people like a razor, some people like what they would call a thinning shear. I don't really support those pieces of tools. You can chip it, you can fringe it. It just depends on what an artist you would have doing your hair. That's right. Oh, I'm a hair expert. I'm a nationally accredited, board certified master of whoop-de-fuck. Somebody said to me the other day, like when they were worried about coming over or whatever, I can't focus with his music on. This is the Latin American Elvis, right? Did I mention that? It's true. This is like a Rocky Horror Picture Show in Spanish, and I still tell you this. I really believe that they've made one of umpteen movies that this will play in. That's where you get the maestro from. Or Rocky Horror, right? And then you realize even somebody that I love, which would be Meatloaf, is really a brand. And it goes on because different people step into these incredible roles. And then you get kind of into the immortality thing. And the whole idea that the music is never going to die. And it's always going to improve. And it's not a bunch of fucking robots doing it. It's like real life people. No, I get it. I get it. But he didn't ever say he was a singer. He's an entertainer. And he must have been born into a lineage kind of like Presley's. And you got all these talents you're good at, and they say, okay, pick one. Just to focus, I guess, when you're young. And then as you're growing up and getting older and coming into your own, you find those things that are niches or specialties. And kind of like me with hairdressing. Hairdressers are a dime a dozen. And that's why they're so easy to mock. But I chose to do way more with my cosmetology license than I believe anyone ever did. And I also am able to speak on any of these things because I'm actually licensed to speak. And then you have to have the State Board of Missouri try to crucify me because they don't agree with the proof that I bring that they actually have in their own books. And then we get into the FDA and we get into all the sterilization and sanitization rules. And how can the government ask a hairdresser to diagnose skin conditions, which we're not allowed to do, and hand out AIDS pamphlets? And you want to know why there's no hairdressers. Hairdressers should be like physicians and politicians and white collar men. They should first do no harm. And anybody that wants to do harm first, I say they get tarred and feathered. You know, not like deadly tar, like some other thing. And then you put them blue feathers on them. And they got to go sit on a pineapple. I mean, I think that would be enough public humiliation to incorporate all the bullshit into the remedy. So, even though we didn't get that far, you get where I'm going. And in the best way I can. And it really does jump all around. And people do have to be able to do simple math, you know, like these people mock. There's more than one disease and disorder. And amelioration of symptoms. Okay, here's a perfect example. Oh, it's so tragic. It really is. All right, let me just put it down. Okay, so let's think about this. So supposedly these territories that became the United States. So they were all different places and they all had their different rules, right? And they were having a war against each other. And supposedly, we became the United States in 1776. So there would be a unification of these territories that would bind them together morally and ethically. It really wasn't about, are you on the left or the right, or are you black or are you white? It wasn't like that. But they had to start it somewhere. And I think they started it by killing the indigenous that were allegedly what you want to call a tan brown Indian or a black African American or even a white honky bitch, daughter of the revolution, didn't come over on no boat, wasn't a slave, and was here in America in the 1600s. But, you know, all right, so back to the thing. You got this apprentice dude that I call the Antichrist. So, of course, in the end, his dumbass doesn't know he works for Christ. Okay. And he gets hit on the head and he gets the amnesia in the secret space program and he goes fucking ballistic. And it isn't even really him because everybody else went bonkers too. Okay. So here we got the guy that everybody thought was the head cheese, which is no more than a fat rat, you know. He says, okay, all y'all states, you get to make your own rules. Now, let's just take where I live. I mean, the home of the Manhattan Project, the biotechnology capital of these here corporate states. A place that has been prophesied to bring a great destiny. Okay. Well, if we got in the car and we cruised 15 minutes east, we would think we're in Illinois because we went across a bridge and a river. But it's still technically Missouri. kind of like East St. Louis is really technically Missouri, but it's on the Illinois side. And that's where they have all the titty bars and um, all the alternative clubs and all the factories. And one just caught fire there recently, you know? It's always smelled like shit over there. The point is, that is a shiny bauble. That is an excuse. That is a mental illness and a stupid way of behaving, and the whole time claiming plausible deniability. So when it comes back into what we can do to build up our immune systems, to say, well, fuck, man, I'm radioactive already. It's really just not a good enough excuse. And the more belief I have in the way I choose to take care of myself, which isn't the way that you guys have to take care of yourself. I'm just the one saying, look, we got options, we got books, we have the science that has been philosophized globally. And here we're the ones wanting to sue the jackasses that made the bad video game, but we're the jackasses that contracted them to do it. And now we're going to sue them. It sounds like a money grab, doesn't it? And that's why it's always back to follow the money. Our health would almost be free if everybody wasn't ripping off the medical industry and playing the insurance game, because you know the lobbyists run everything. Right now, we can't get my homeopathy like I explained. See, this will harden up. And it's not bad or anything. I was just showing you how easy it is to activate this. And then when my friend rolls in, she can fucking spray down with alcohol outside. And then she can come inside. See, I'm not putting myself at any risk because I'm not touching her. I'm not touching her sore going, hi, how you doing? You know, let me pop that zit. You know what I mean? It's kind of like that mentality. Not that this is a zit. This is an open wound. It's the same thing. So she will go her own self personally to my ground level stop off point before the shampoo bowl. And she will apply this to her own problem. And in the meantime, what I'll be doing is I'll be getting her a little piece of gauze. You know, it's breathable. See, like at the hospital, if you got an open wound, like a diabetic ulcer or some bullshit, you know, the old story is you put Vaseline on it. That's like a sharp, thin blade bleeding you dry because they say keep it moist. That's not really prudent. You want to draw the poison that is moist out of the skin because, see, as your blood coagulates in this stupid story, it brings up these ulcerations. And then, you know, from there, your skin's open and you go outside and the bug man sprays out there. You know, next thing you know, you got malaria. See, it's kind of like the same story with this AIDS thing. Nobody's getting this virus from engaging in unsafe sexual practices or IV use. They've weaponized it to the point that no warfare that is obvious is needed. And of course, like I said, a lot of people got the fever, man, and they're losing their memories. I mean, people used to call that Alzheimer's, but seriously, I mean, the FDA must have Alzheimer's to allow secret deodorant to have alum and aluminum chlorohydrate in their secret product. And then the next thing you know, you get some vigilant bitches. Not vigilant. No. Militant. Militant bitches. Militant. That are showing their secret deodorant. And now it's infused with essential oils. Back to the thieves' oil. See, a lot of idiots actually drink things like bleach and essential oils, which is why your holistic stylist would never recommend these therapies without an elaborate discourse in the subject. Because what I talk about, which is the Bach flower essence, bless your heart, Amy, for having them. It's really good. It is so good. And I should do a show for you and any of your friends that want to join about the Bach body maps. And so you can actually apply this to your outside too. And they draw elaborate maps that you can treat diseases or disorders with. I also need to bring the book and a lot of people say it's bullshit, and that just shows you how stupid they are, that your emotional feelings create disease. And I have a book that is the emotional cause for disease. And back to these different states responding to this plague differently. Those would be called amelioration of symptoms. In homeopathy, a lot of people think it's too hard to learn because they need to know where in their body hurts. Like doctors back in the old days said, point to where it hurts, and you do that. Well, amelioration of symptoms would be like, is it worse when it's cold or when it's hot? They are descriptive words that can define your symptoms. So theoretically, you would need to be a licensed homeopath. So you could take people through an elaborate dance of asking them what the fuck. I mean, a lot of people don't know what the fuck. So they can't really go to a homeopath and see. Regular insurance, I mean, like this Medicare, Medicaid horse shit, that don't ever ask me if I will accept. Same reason I don't vote is the same reason for that. The whole system is fucked up and they know it. There was a tweet today about that too, by the way. And Trump's just looking for his way out. And at first, I was gonna go with it. Like it, tweet it, do whatever with it. And then I said, no, fuck no. And you know why? Because there was more of those little government lines running down the left-hand side, which would be the responses from the assholes. And that's how They know who knows what, who runs with who, and who's pulling a psyop with their group of butt plug friends. All right, my client's here. I mean, that's okay. She's outside talking to Joe. Let me check this real quick. Hang on. Get back. Get back. Listen to your take a spray bottle with the alcohol. Sit down, spray your shoes, spray your clothes. Yeah, it's in a spray mist bottle. It's in that.
Okay, well, I'm gonna leave this in the car.
That's fine. Do whatever you want.
Okay.
This is how you get in my house.
No, I know, I'm just, you know, that.
And then when you get in, I've already made you a poultice and treat you.
Okay,
Okay.
okay, I'll be right.
Yeah. Like I told you, I'm a little bit of bitch and a little bit of love. But you know, when you deal with people that work in the medical community that have been told all the fucking. Well, see, I'm not supposed to have to say so because I'm not educated. I'm fucking right. I'm way more educated. And they're still ignoring me. So, we'll pick up on that later. You know they rotate on those pineapples and they like it. Remember little Nikki? Right. Exactly. And that is when, you know, Elvis made me rip my leg open, remember? And I fell over part of the Jeep in a dark room. I think he pushed me. And so I did surgery on my leg. And do you know, for real, serious? Look at that. No scar. Now, I will tell you what happens to me. When I shave my legs, I'll always nick this because the skin has been lost and I don't have any lumps or scar tissue because
All of you guys outside.
you saw me whittle them down. So
You know.
I'm going to get off the phone. I really do love y'all. And I'm not sure if I'll be back tonight. We'll have to see. Joe might have to take a necessary drive, and if he does, I'll be home alone and I'll be back. So until then, peace out, guys.